everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily Show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Just cracking a cold one over here on the Evolve with Emily show. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Evolve with Emily. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and I really hope that you guys are joining us for the YouTube version of this episode today because I have an in-house guest. You guys know that in-person guests are my absolute favorite because there's nothing like that in-person connection and conversation. So I'm really excited today to introduce you guys to one of my friends from Tampa, Florida. She's the owner of Team LoCo Fit. She's the host of the LoCoFit Show. She is a physique coach. She has a master's of science in exercise science. She's an IFBB Bikini Pro, first Phorm elite trainer. Laurin Conlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here and staying at my home for the weekend.
No, this has been amazing.
Yeah, what's been your favorite part so far?
Probably just our conversations. I mean, obviously, like,
oh,
of course. No, like, it's hard to connect with people, obviously, in like a very deep way, especially when you're distant, unless you've already cultivated that previously. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I have a lot of friends who live all over, and like if you've been friends with them for a long time, you can keep up with them, but being in person with people is absolutely my favorite. And that's why I love traveling. I love doing stuff. So like we've done obviously a lot of fun things, but that's been most enjoyable.
I actually agree.
Very weird conversations, but they've been great.
Awesome. Some that are going to make it to the show, others that might not.
Others definitely will not, but that is just for our own pleasure.
Yeah. And those are the best friends too, that you can have those conversations. You're like, yeah,
so we're not judging this. This is not even a really well thought out thought. It's just a thought. So it might sound insane, but what do we think about this?
Yeah. The friends where you can just like, pose questions. Like, this is a thought. This is a question.
Literally just talking is always like this like thought experiment when we're talking about those type of like higher level things.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And like, I want to encourage you guys listening to not be afraid to open up to like your close friends like that and express thoughts and think about things in a deeper manner, you know, because I think too often people are scared to bring up those topics or to go deep with people, you know, and maybe don't do it online and express your craziest thoughts out there, but like, you know, with the trusted people that you love, like open up and think, you know, expand your mind, think differently about the same thing, because I think that's when true growth can occur, when minds come together and share these things that people often don't want to talk about because it's hard topics, or maybe you're not sure exactly how you feel or believe on a certain topic. And so it's hard to talk about, but sometimes you won't know how you think and feel until you've talked about it multiple times with different people who've had different experiences.
And that's how you formulate new thoughts, right? You start to discuss things and then you take a piece from that conversation. You're like, oh, well, this was interesting. I never thought of it this way. And then that formulates your experiences moving forward. And then you see more things and you gather more information. And I think people have to go into conversations with an open mind. Like you said, online is probably not the best situation for this just because it's so hard to have nuance. And unfortunately, what sucks about online communications is that people a lot of times don't give you that leeway to like change your mind, which is really frustrating because there's so many things. I mean, how many things have you said before that you're like, oh my gosh, I think completely differently about this now, or not even just so differently, but like I've evolved my view of this. And I feel like a lot of times online people can really struggle to like almost forgive that. And it's like the people who don't really even know you too, which is the hilarious part. It's like, wait, like you're putting this like filter perception over somebody and you don't even actually know them. So that can be really challenging. So I get why people don't want to open up online, and for good reason, right? But when you are in person, you know, bring it up in a situation where it's like, you know, it makes sense to be talking about those things and say it in a way like, hey, like I've just been thinking about this. Like, I don't really know what I think about this or how I really feel about this, but like, and just discuss. And I mean, if you can't do that with your friend group, you probably need new friends.
100%. Because the best friends are going to not judge you, you know, they're going to be able to hold that space for you and help you process that thought. One thing that I love about talking with you is, and maybe it comes from the fact that you've watched so many debates and, you know, people who have really big thought processes that like, you know, process together, but like, you're always like, okay, so I hear you. and, devil's advocate here, this would be the argument to what you're saying. And then it's like, it helps to open your mind and say, oh, wow, like, okay, let me think about that side of it as well. And, so it's so much fun to have good conversation like that. I think we both nerd out about like deep intellectual conversation. Yeah, clearly. We just went off on it and didn't plan to for like 5 minutes.
We're like, so this is what the show's about, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's funny because the first thing I wanted to talk about was that, another thing with talking with you is you always have like research and studies of groups of people and, all of these things that you bring into the conversation, which I think provides a lot of depth and value to the conversation. So I want to know, how did you become such a nerd? Why did you decide to get your master's? And what do you love about what you've done in the research? Like, what gets you so amped about it?
Yeah, so I've always just been really good at school. I always enjoyed school. I always liked it. When I got to my undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was just kind of like, well, I'm interested in food and I'll study dietetics, right? And then I started to get more interested in research. I actually helped out a graduate student with his research when I was an undergrad, and I realized, wow, I want to do this. I have more questions that aren't answered. And so that's when I decided to, go pursue a master's. That was really it. Like, I'm good at school. I have more questions. I can succeed here. So my family was very supportive to be like, all right, let's, you can continue doing this. So I got there. And I'm so blessed. Like Dr. Campbell, he was my grad school advisor. I talk about him all the time, but he's seriously one of the most amazing people in my life still.
Wow.
Literally the other day we got on the phone. We haven't talked in months. We talked for over an hour. We would have talked for 5 hours if we had the time, but we talked for an hour about like religion, politics, new research, just like projects we have going on, questions we have, like just full in. Like
That's
it's so interesting. So anyways, he gave me full reign to do whatever I wanted with my research, which was totally unheard of for a master's project. So it was really fun. I learned so much, and I learned so much just about the process of science inquiry, right? And like how you go in with a question and then you think you know what you're going to have answered, but you really come away with so much more information that is never even going to be able to be published, not because it's bad information, but because it's not how science works, right? But I was able to take so much from that. And what I love about research is that obviously you're going to be able to ask questions, have a very specific process to answering those questions. You can gather a little bit of information, and then that is what you can use to shape the principles. In my case, working with individual clients, use that to shape those principles of what you do, but then also make sure that you're using a scientific mindset to look at the experiences that your clients are having and piece those things together and say, okay, I've had 5 clients who have responded this way. Maybe I need to figure out what that reasoning is or why that happened. So it's not just even about research in general. It's also about just having a scientific mindset about like asking questions, gathering more data, adjusting your position when things change. So that's really how I try to view things now, because to me, it's like the most logical way to do it. And then,
So how does that play into the way that you coach your clients and the way that you even train your coaches within LoCo Fit?
Yeah. So I would say that we use evidence-based principles as the foundation, right, of what everybody's doing. And then we're using our own experiences as coaches and what the client is sharing with us, because it's a very client-centered business, to then make the adjustments, right? It's not just about here's the optimal program. And that's what bothers me so much about the science community or just the fitness community in general, right? It's like, hey, here's the one method that's the best. This method might be the best for this person, and it might work for a lot of other people, but it doesn't mean that it's the best for every single person. And when we're talking about coaching on a one-on-one scale, or even like a moderate to large group type of coaching, right? Like there's different ways to coach people. You have to take into account what that client is doing, right? Or what their life experiences are, what their schedule is like, what their goals are. And there's foundational principles. But then everything else is very, very nuanced and needs to be specific to how somebody is responding, what they want to be doing, where they are. Because I could say, hey, here's the best program ever. But that does not work for you. So what is the point of me saying, here's the optimal program for you to do absolutely nothing with it? Instead to say, all right, you're in this place. We would like to get over here, but why don't we start making these small changes and behavioral adaptations in order to get over to this position at some point.
Yeah.
But most people are trying to go from like doing nothing to doing everything, and that's why they fail. And then they continue to do nothing. They say, oh, this program didn't work. I need to go to the next program.
Right.
And it's like, no, it wasn't any program is going to work. Almost every program, right? There are definitely ones that are like not suitable. So I don't want to say that everything has a place, because there are certain things that just don't. But for the most part, it's probably not the program. It's probably how you approached the program or how somebody was coaching you through said program.
That's so true. And I often find that clients, when they come to you with goals, right, that they're often in a rush to reach those goals. What do you think are the benefits of dieting slowly?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many. From a physiological perspective, you're going to be able to maintain muscle mass much better, which is the number one thing that we're trying to do when we're dieting, right? And muscle tissue is very, very, not only metabolically active, but it just makes you like a healthier person in general. And it's really hard to build. And especially we work with a lot of females, I'm sure you do too. And it's really hard to build muscle. And it's really easy to lose it. So when people want to crash diet or even just diet quickly, and I want to say crash diet, so most people get, oh no, I don't want to do a crash diet. But I'm like, but you still want to lose 15 pounds in a month. That's call it whatever you want. That's too fast, right? I mean, unless you have a lot of weight to lose, that would be easier. But for most people, it's just not reasonable. So we're going to lose muscle tissue, which is, again, hard to build. And when most people are dieting, they look at people like, that's what I want to look like. I just need to get leaner. And I'm like, you need to get leaner, but you really need more muscle.
100%.
Like that, you can diet right now and you're just going to look
skinnier.
Skinny.
Yeah.
Like that skinny fat look. Like that's not what, nobody really wants that. I mean, some people might want that, but I haven't met a lot of them.
Right.
So we need to maintain muscle tissue. So that's the number one reason to diet slowly. Dietary adherence is another big thing. So most people are going to struggle with dietary adherence in any capacity, regardless of the plan. That is the hardest thing. When you're having metabolic adaptations from dieting, there is no way to get around those. So why are we making it harder on ourselves to adhere to the plan instead of saying, okay, how do we actually create these behaviors and these slow changes to where we can be consistent with it? So if you diet really quickly, you're going to lack adherence. Potentially, not everybody, but most people, right?
Yeah.
So you're just putting yourself, you're making something that's hard already harder. Why are we doing that? There's always going to be metabolic and hormonal adaptations from dieting, but the faster that you do that, you can potentially speed those up. Most of those adaptations are body fat driven. So meaning a lot of times when hormones change or hunger changes or satiety and all these different things, that is going to be because your body fat is lower. However, if we are just constantly dropping food very quickly, upping cardio, do that for a few weeks, fall off plan, get back on, we have this cycle of this chronic yo-yo dieting, you're not in a position to lose fat effectively. Most people are looking to diet and lose fat, not to just, lose a little bit of scale weight and then look worse and be in a worse position with their relationship with food and how they view themselves. And now you view yourself as a failure because you tried to go too quickly. It wasn't sustainable. You weren't able to adhere. And now you're like, well, this is why I don't try anything. And then you go off plan for a few months and then you're like, oh, I'm sick of this again. And then you want to get back into that cycle. And that's the cycle that we're trying to break. Like what me and my company are trying to do. That is really what we've decided is our mission. And we've always said Team LoCo Fit, redefine healthy. And I always liked that, but I never really knew what it meant, but I couldn't articulate it. But that really is our mission because there are so many people who are just stuck in this cycle of this chronic dieting, not even just the actual dieting itself, but the mindset of that. And they continuously feel like failures, can't accomplish anything. And then they don't trust themselves with really anything. And then they go on to the next extreme plan that's promised to make all these changes for them. And then the cycle continues and continues until at some point you reach kind of that rock bottom. And obviously some people are going to have to reach that point. But if we can stop people from getting to that place, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I really want people to understand, okay, you didn't get here overnight, right? And so the changes that we need to make are going to take time. And if you were to just dedicate a year to something, you would be in such a better place than saying, let me dedicate to this and next 8-week challenge or this, that. And I'm not knocking challenges by any means, but again, that mindset of I'm only going to do it for the short sprint, that is putting you into a detrimental position.
Absolutely, because instead of focusing on a lifestyle change of how can I live a healthier life, it's how can I just get my result? How can I get that quick fix to look the way that I want to look at my birthday party or at the pool party, which there's nothing wrong with.
Exactly.
But
you need those goals too, right? You need short goals along the way, because if I'm just to say to somebody, if you reach out for coaching, I was like, okay, give me a year or two, you'd be like, okay, go fuck yourself, right? That'd be a little much. That's the reality. All right, in a year or two, we're probably going to get where you want. But we have to bake in these short-term goals as well to keep you on track. And anything from the behavior change literature is going to share that. You can't have a goal that's too easy because then you don't really want to do anything. And it can't be so lofty and so vague that you have no plan and it feels so out of reach. You're like, I'm not even on that same planet as that person.
I'm not even chipping away at it.
No, so you need to have a goal that is going to push you and is much higher than you're at, but it needs to be specific. It needs to be something that you can aim at and build on. And having those small goals baked within the larger goal is what we need to do.
Okay, so redefining healthy. Now, when people hear healthy, they may think a salad and going for a workout. What is healthy? What are the components of healthy? Is it just diet? Is it just training? What does it encompass for you?
I would say that it's diet, movement, so any type of training or cardio. And there's so many different ways to be physically active, right? So I would say nutrition, being physically active, movement, and then also just like your mindset, right? And that's something that when I first started, I was not really aware of, right? Like I wasn't something that was really prevalent then, or I didn't really notice it as much with clients then. And now with more experiences and things that I've learned and working with people for almost 10 years, the mindset is so important. And we can have have that optimal, perfect plan, but that means nothing if your mindset is not in the right place. So it really is about, nutrition, movement, and mindset. And that's what I encompass healthy with. And sometimes it's a salad, and sometimes it's a burger, and sometimes it's a really hard lift, and other times it's an easy walk.
So good. Oh my gosh. That's such a simple way to put it, but it's so true. And I love your mission. I think it's so important. And I think people do need to redefine what healthy even means for them. And think about it from a competitor standpoint, right? Not a lot of people listening are competitors, though a lot of competitors do follow us both. But, for us, it's like a whole nother realm because we often develop a body dysmorphia or just a warped sense of what healthy and fit looks like. So I think it's important to kind of like take a step back and say, okay, what is healthy to me? Because I think sometimes, or what is fit? What is in shape to me? What does that mean? What does athletic mean? And redefining these words for yourself, because maybe you think like, oh, I have this goal of being athletic, and you like always feel out of reach with it. And yet if you actually look at how you're performing throughout the week and what you're doing for your body and your mind, you are being a great athlete, right? So I think sometimes people feel so out of reach of their goals because they have the wrong definitions of their goals, or they're holding themselves to a previous standard of, oh, athlete only means that I'm stage lean, right? And if you think that, then you're in for a really difficult time, and it's really time to redefine that. So I really love that that's y'all's mission. Okay, I want to go into understanding hunger cues, because I think this is really important. And I know that hunger cues can kind of get, messed up sometimes after a lot of dieting. So how do you help your clients understand hunger cues?
So one of the things that regulates hunger is called leptin. It's a satiety hormone, and it is tied to fat cells. So when you're losing adipocytes inside of the fat cell, you are going to lower your leptin levels. You're also going to actively increase ghrelin, which is a hunger peptide inside of your stomach. So you're hungrier and you're less satiated when you're in a calorie deficit, or you're with lower body fat. This all makes sense. Some people take a lot longer than others to recover here, right? There's just some people who are naturally always hungry, right? There's some people who are like, I'm never really hungry at all. And there's, of course, going to be some variation there with individuals. But a lot of times, once body fat is, so if somebody's like, oh, I'm really hungry, and they've been dieting for a long time, it's like, well, that's why, right? Like that's one of the main reasons. Like if you are leaner than your body's natural settling point, you're going to be hungry. There are ways that we can circumvent hunger and make it easier, but you are going to be hungry. Once we've gotten to a place where somebody is weight stable and they're still expressing significant hunger, a lot of times that is going to go to like their relationship with food and how they're viewing things, and this kind of like scarcity mindset around food. And if somebody has dieted a lot previously, it's really, really hard because you always feel like, oh, well, when's my next meal? I can't wait for my next meal, and I have to eat at this time. And you're very, very regimented. And if it goes off at 30 minutes, it's like, oh my God, everything's over. And again, all of those things are compounded if you've been dieting off and on for a very, very long time. And I don't really have any research on this, but just anecdotally I've seen with myself, I know you've seen it, we've talked about this weekend, as well as like with clients. If you just stop dieting for a while, a lot of times you just feel better and your hunger is regulated, right? Part of that is, again, being at a normal body fat place for you as an individual and not having these massive fluctuations. But it's also just how you're viewing things, right? I'm no longer looking at food like, oh my gosh, when am I going to get my next meal? Or this, that, I'm going to be dieting again. No, I'm just, okay, if I'm hungry, it's okay, I'm hungry. I'm going to sit with it. Or you get so regulated. So I would say for a lot of people, we might need to change the method of what they're doing. Some people get really, really obsessed with hunger because they are so rigidly tracking things. Other people get really hungry for the opposite reason. They're not tracking enough of their variables, right? So it's going to depend on the client. The person who's like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. It's like, well, when did you eat? Oh, well, I totally skipped breakfast because I was busy, and then I didn't have lunch. I didn't have my first meal until 2:00.
Right.
Okay, well, this is why your hunger's out of control, right? You have no schedule. You have no structure. You're not planning your meals ahead of time. You're not picking foods that are going to be satiating, et cetera. For the other person who's been tracking really, really rigidly, to the T, I ate at this exact time. This is my meal. I'm going to be thinking about it all day.
Yeah.
All you're doing is putting your focus on food. So we need to dial that back. So that's why like coaching is so individualized, because it's like, I could say, hey, this is what's in front of us, but those two clients could be in totally different positions.
Yeah.
So never letting yourself get so swept away with the day that you're just like so erratically hungry. That typically is when people start to develop binging behaviors or any type of like overeating behavior. And it's very, very common. They won't eat that much earlier, and then it all of a sudden hits them. Oh my gosh, I've barely eaten today. They get home, they've had a really stressful day. Bam, go to the kitchen, go to the pantry. You start to overeat. What happens after that? The next morning, you don't wake up very hungry, and then you don't eat that much the next day. And maybe the whole next day you kind of don't need to eat that much because you overate the night before. And then the next day comes around, same thing happens, right? So we do have to regulate some timing, because that does help people to be on a consistent routine, but also being so dialed in to the point where like you can't have any deviations, and all you're doing is thinking about food is really detrimental. And I had a client actually who's been very, very food focused for honestly most of her life. And we've been working together off and on for a while, and she's gotten to a much better place. And she actually started using this hunger scale as well. And like, so for some people, having a regulatory scale in that sense to be like, all right, where am I feeling right now? Like, am I still hungry? Am I full? Am I starting to feel full? Am I overstuffed? And, you're not going to get it perfect, but you have to start to recognize these internal cues. And a lot of people always want to put things on external cues. And I'm all about external cues and data and tracking and measuring and all that. But if you can't internally regulate yourself, you're never going to be successful in any plan, because something is going to change. And there needs to be flexibility with that mindset. And if we're not in that position, because you're only relying on external things, then you're going to be in for a rough time.
Yeah, that's so good. And, I remember growing up, we were always taught to finish everything on our plate. And that was just a habit that I created. So, when I got older and into dieting, I didn't even realize that I was finishing all of my food and I didn't even need it or want it. And so when I started to become more self-aware to my own hunger cues, I started to leave food on the table, and then I would, box it up and take it home for like a second meal. Or, sometimes if I wanted to like portion control, I would just take half of the meal and box it up right away so that I would have a meal for later. I wasn't tempted to overeat. And it actually felt really good to be able to say, like, I actually don't need this food. I don't need the excess amount, because at restaurants, oftentimes the serving sizes are huge, especially in Texas. Like in Texas, everything's bigger, So I think, that's been a habit that's been really, good for me to implement, because I think there's a lot of people that probably grew up that way, where it's like you finish everything on your plate, but at a certain point you got to realize, like, what are my nutritional needs? Am I actually hungry? Do I actually need this? Is this food providing what I actually want it to provide for me? Or am I just eating because it's here? So just that self-awareness piece helps a lot.
It's really hard to develop, and especially if you have had external cues for a long time, right? Whether it's like tracking macros. Tracking macros is one of the biggest ones, right? Because it basically takes any of that intuition away from food. And there's nothing wrong with tracking macros. So like, let me be very clear, but that is one of the things about it, is that it can take away that internal processing and regulation, because now you're externally regulating it. You're no longer saying, am I hungry? Am I full? You're saying, I have this many macros to hit.
That's so good.
And what happens is, for a lot of people, they get so used to that. And then as soon as they can't track, right, I'm doing air quotes here. As soon as they can't track, or something changes, or they go on a vacation or this or that, they have no internal regulation of their satiety or hunger signals. And then what's going to happen? They're going to overeat, or they're going to undereat, and then they're going to do both of those things. And that's when people also, then the mental side starts to kick in, and then there's the food guilt and the overcompensatory behaviors, et cetera, and it snowballs really quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to segue into something that you've started to do recently, which is, or I'm not sure if it was recent or not, but I saw you post about it and I was really intrigued by it. But you talk about delaying caffeine in the morning. So talk to me about that. Why do you do it, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, so Dr. Andrew Huberman, if you guys follow his stuff, if you don't follow his stuff, you need to. He talked about this. It was a podcast, like maybe, I don't know, time, what is time? It could have been 6 months, could have been a year, I'm not really sure. But the first time I heard it, I was like, delaying caffeine? I was like, this sounds horrible. This guy's nuts. You know what I mean?
Telling me to not have my coffee in the morning, he sucks.
I'm like, yeah, fuck you. I was really on board with a lot of your stuff, and no longer.
Yeah.
But it made a lot of sense. So basically the way that caffeine works is that it's going to bind to the adenosine receptor, right? That's just the mechanism of caffeine. When we go to sleep and we wake up, we naturally have an adenosine suppression. So basically, we already have this mechanism that's kind of built in, and it's going to wear off at some point, right? So instead of waking up and having caffeine right away, and like you're basically taking away like the endogenous mechanism that's already there, right? So take advantage of having this when you wake up. You already have this adenosine suppression, and then 60 minutes, 120 minutes after, it's going to wear it off. Then you can have your caffeine, and it's going to be a lot more effective. And he talked about there being less of an afternoon crash with that, and I honestly do feel that as well.
Oh, wow.
So I really haven't changed how much caffeine I have. It's more so I feel the benefit. I feel the effects of it a lot more. And it's like a smoother feeling. It is a little bit rough if you wake up and right away make coffee, which a lot of people do. I'm somebody who loves the taste of coffee, so I will do I'll do decaf in the morning, and for me that works great. And then I'm able to, you know, kind of go about my day. And now, honestly, I mean, I don't need it really for a few hours, and sometimes I'll go by and I'll be like, wow, oh my goodness, it's been like 4 hours since I've been up and haven't had any caffeine. And then when I have it, I actually feel it, because I think we all know that feeling when we've had too much caffeine and
it's
like
not doing anything anymore.
Like, okay, I actually feel worse. This is great.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a very weird kind of quirky thing, but it makes sense when you understand the mechanism of it. And it basically just makes the caffeine better. And I've had some people anecdotally tell me, because I've talked about this a lot and people like love it. They say that their digestion is better. So some people have digestive benefits from it, which most people would think, oh, you know, that would be the opposite. But actually people find that their digestion overall is more regulated. And then they also just have like better, more clear energy. So
yeah,
I would try it. And a lot of people, you know, if you're like, no, listen, I get up and I have it right away, what I would say is to start slowly doing it. And maybe push it back 15 minutes, push it back 30 minutes, etc. And then everybody asks me, okay, well, what about if I train first thing in the morning and I really need to focus on my performance, etc.? You don't have to do this. I'm just saying this is what is out there. And sometimes there are trade-offs for things that, you know, we have to make. So if somebody say like they're in a calorie deficit and they're really trying to push training for like a competition or something, no, you probably need that energy because you don't have any calories or anything, right? So the trade-off of you maybe not having that you're going to have an afternoon crash anyway, like let's be honest. So might as well take the pre-workout before you train. Right. And then on your off training days, maybe you can delay it. And, you know, some people just, again, it's just here. This is just the mechanism of how it works. And you don't have to do it, especially if you do train in the morning. But if you're somebody who doesn't, I would just try it out and see how you feel. But I really, really enjoy it.
Well, I wanted to mention an alternative to having caffeine is you could also try a nootropic, which I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show. So I started the show out cracking a cold one, but for those of you that are just listening and not watching, it's really Euphoria by Cured, which is a nootropic. So I'm really not drinking beer. I don't even drink beer, but I'm definitely not just like drinking on my show. So it is a nootropic and it's incredible. But I wanted to tell you guys about another product called Rise, which is a nootropic formulated by Cured's very own in-house clinical herbalist. It contains a blend of lion's mane, cordyceps mushrooms, as well as some others, and broad spectrum CBD, of course. Now, I want to tell you guys about cordyceps because they're really incredible, and they're actually famous among endurance athletes all around the world because it helps with energy and also endurance. The scientific name for lion's mane is Hericium. Do you know how to say this? Hericium erinaceus. I definitely butchered that. Anyways, lion's mane kind of sounds like Hercules in a sense, and with a good reason.
Sounds
because
legit.
Yeah, it sounds legit because it actually beefs up your brain in order to get things done. So these together create such an incredible product for you to feel energized, not from a caffeine hit, but actually from such a more natural route. And then, of course, broad spectrum CBD works by acting on systems inside of your body that helps to regulate physiology, mood, the immune system, and everyday experiences. So Rise truly is a powerhouse product that is going to have you laser focused, present, and full of clarity as you tackle your day. Right now, Cured is extending an exclusive offer to you, the Evolve with Emily listeners, and you can grab Rise for 20% off by visiting visiting www.curednutrition.com/Emily Hayden and using coupon code Emily Hayden at checkout. That's CURED nutrition.com/Emily Hayden and coupon code Emily Hayden at checkout. And as previously mentioned, Cured is the very first partnership that I've ever brought on the Evolve with Emily show. And I'm so stoked for it. I hope that you guys can be really excited about it, because it will help me to provide more and better content for you guys. So if you've ever wanted to support the show, this is now the #1 way that you can support the show, by using the code. And if you guys do that, go ahead and email your receipt to evolvewithemily@gmail.com. It'll be in the show notes below, because for the month of May, if you purchase during the month of May, I'm going to be doing a giveaway and actually be giving you guys my 4-week fat loss training program absolutely for free.
Yeah, Cured is amazing.
Yeah, you actually use Cured.
Yeah, I've worked with them since they started. I knew Joe before, the owner, Joe Sheehy, and we just been industry friends, you know, and I'd been on a podcast or two with him, and then I was actually at the Olympia, and he was like, "Hey, I'm starting this company, and he was like giving out the spices and all this stuff, and I was like, "Okay, cool, man." And then whatever, I support you. And then I remember he was like, "Hey, I'd love to bring you on." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I was like one of the first people that they brought on, and still to this day work with them. Absolutely love them. Rise is incredible. All of their products are amazing. And the thing with CBD, so CBD has had this very interesting arc, especially in the fitness industry.
Totally.
It's
very blown
unknown.
up.
Well, it was unknown, and then it blew up. And then what happened is that it blew up with influencer marketing with terrible products.
Amen.
So everybody who was using CBD was like, it doesn't work, because they were using trash ass CBD that did not have any benefits to it. And because the product just wasn't dosed properly. So what I love about Cured is that not only do they make, they know where they manufacture everything, et cetera, in Colorado, but every product has a COA, so Certificate of Analysis, that you can go, and on the bottle, it'll say a number, and you can go and search that, and you can see exactly what is in that that batch of that product. So if it says, hey, this has 20 milligrams of CBD, and you'll get the COA, and it's 19.9 or whatever, 20.1. It will be to the T of what it says on there. So you're getting what you pay for, and you can actually see that. And it is very, very rare for companies to be that transparent. But that's the biggest reason that I've supported them over the years. And there's just so many different ways that that CBD can regulate people's systems, depending on what they really need, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's pain management, sometimes it's digestion, sometimes it's anxiety relief. It's really just going to depend on the individual. And then that's just the CBD products in general. But then, there's other things they have the CBN product, which is great for sleep, and then Rise, which is great for focus because they combine the other nootropics in there. So it's a really, really unique company. So I'm glad that you guys are partnered.
Yeah,
Stamp of
thanks.
approval.
I know. I love them so much, and I agree. I think, one of the things that I love about them is one of their mission statement is to bring integrity back to the industry that they're in, and I love that they're leading the way by doing that. So thanks for mentioning that. Okay, so I want to go into some of the Team LoCo foundational habits. So you guys have foundational habits that you seek to, really help your clients create inside of their lives. So could you share maybe just a few of them that our listeners could implement into their lives?
Yeah, so we started to recognize, again, when I first started, it was very much here's the program, here's your macros, here's what you should be doing. And then as I started to work with more people, I recognized, all right, this is not just about macros. There's a lot of people who need more foundational habits, and also being able to rely on the foundational habits once you've tracked for a while, or once you have a handle on things, or when life gets crazy, oh my gosh, the past 3 days have been absolutely insane. I wasn't able to track, but instead of saying, I can't do this, now I'm going to go completely off plan, I have these foundational habits to rely on.
Love that.
So it really is the crux of any program that we're creating for somebody. So getting protein, 3 to 5 protein servings a day is going to be really, really key. Most people are not eating enough protein on a consistent basis. So that is going to be number one. 80-20 rule. So 80%, whole unprocessed foods, 20%, trying to aim for that, right? So you're eating mostly nutrient dense foods. We're going to typically aim for a fruit and vegetable target for clients. Again, just making sure that we're getting these well-rounded diets in there, because you could be tracking, but what are you eating? You know what I mean?
Totally.
Aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, because sleep regulates so many different things. And then lastly, we have a water goal, because a lot of people are very, very inconsistent with water, which will, performance will suffer, digestion suffers so much. People don't drink enough water. And they're always so surprised. And I'm like, oh my God, no, if you just drank a little bit more water, you would have much more regulated digestion.
Yes. I just did a solo podcast on both like water and sleep, just talking about the importance of it, because people don't realize a lot of their issues are coming from something as simple as getting your sleep in and getting all your water in.
Yes. So those would be the like 5 main habits that we'll have clients track. And some clients will exclusively track habits. Some people will exclusively track macros. Other clients will do both. And then another really big thing that we do prioritize is just kind of like activity and steps and getting in some kind of daily movement. And the thing with walking, like I always try to recommend walking, because there really isn't something that is so like, you can stack so many quality habits if you walk at like the right times of day. Like it's just absolutely incredible. So getting sun exposure at different times of day is going to help set your circadian rhythm. So that's number 1. So if you can get morning sun exposure and evening sun exposure, you're going to help regulate your sleep and your wakefulness and your alertness. So that's number 1. If you're doing that, if you're outside at those times, going for walks, you're now going to get steps in, you're going to get some movement in. There's also, especially in the morning, if you have this like optic flow, which is basically like when you're walking or biking or really anywhere where like I'm not going to get too nerdy with it because I'm not even super well versed in it, but the way that you're walking and the way that your eyes are seeing things, you're going to reduce the amygdala activity, which is like the fear center of our brain and where like a lot of anxiety producing thoughts come from. So we're going to lower that. So you're going to be a little bit more clear headed. You're also going to, if you've just eaten or it's around a meal, you're going to be able to help regulate your blood glucose and your insulin secretion as well. So there's so many things. If we could like just get some walking in, and anecdotally, again, I don't have any research on this, but the clarity that comes from walking, and just like being able to like just be with those thoughts and like process things and give yourself 10, 20, 30 minutes. Everybody's going to have a different amount of time that they can dedicate to this. But you can really knock a lot of really great things out with walking. And it's not hard. It's not like, it's not hard on your body. And honestly, I find that I have so much more energy when I do that. And like, when we think about foundational habits, a lot of people think, well, I don't have time for that. Well, what happens a lot of times is when we're not prioritizing certain things, it actually takes us longer to do other things, right? We're not as productive. We're not as focused. It might take us 3 or 4 hours to do something that it might actually take us 2 if we had just spent an hour doing this, right? Like, so if we had an hour to ourselves in a day, 30 minutes earlier, 30 minutes later, and you were able to now be more productive for your work bouts, well, then why wouldn't we take this time, right? It's still a net win. So you're doing these things to improve, like, your mindset and your stress resiliency and your health. And you're also going to be more productive, and you're getting almost more hours back in the day. So it is a time investment, but you're getting time back because of how productive and focused you are, and also just, your health in general. So I would say that's not on our, tracking as a foundational habit, but it's something that we weave into almost every one of our clients' programs, is talking about those benefits and having people be a little bit more active. And I haven't met one person who feels worse by taking the occasional walk.
Right. And
nobody feels worse.
Yeah. And I love that you make this your foundational habits, because it really takes people off of the mindset of, oh, I'm on program, or, oh, I'm off program. Right. Because like you mentioned, like when people go for a trip or something, they're like, oh, well, I'm not in my normal routine. I don't have my gym program. So here it's like there is at least no room for excuses. Like you can, no matter what you're doing, where you're at, focus on your water, your sleep, your food, your protein. And I think the protein is such a good, simple, cue to have in people's mind, especially when they are traveling or holidays, like for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or, they get so excited about the food. But if they know, like, okay, one of my habits every day is getting my protein in, and they're getting that protein in, they're not going to be as hungry when it comes to that huge meal, as if they had just like starved and saved up all those calories all day long.
Oh yeah. That goes back to when we talked about in the beginning, that kind of, that binging cycle people fall into, that overeating cycle. You don't eat earlier because you're trying to save up. And then what ends up happening is you end up overeating. And then that creates other compensatory behaviors. So in the literature, when it's related to food, and this is actually what my master's research was on, was looking how different types of dieting affect weight loss and weight regain. And there's a whole like eating behavior type research that looks at the different types of restraint around food. So like rigid restraint or flexible restraint. And you can apply this to really anything. So this could be for your training program, your mindset, your habits, your whatever it is. And the idea is that when you have rigid restraint, people think that that's like super hardcore. I'm a badass. Like this is rigid. I'm going to be on this plan. Well, typically people are engaging in very like black and white thinking. It's I'm off plan, I'm off, and I'm on plan or I'm off plan. And typically, especially when we're talking about dieting, this actually shows worse outcomes for almost every measure in terms of body composition and relationship with food. Whereas with flexible restraint, you're able to actually moderate yourself. And you say, okay, if I'm going to have a lot, if I'm going to eat more tonight, I'm probably going to have a little bit less earlier, maybe a little bit less tomorrow. And I'm not going to like go too crazy here. And I'm able to actually restrain myself, or I'm able to make a choice. And it's looking at things as a choice and a decision instead of, okay, I can have this or I can't have this. I'm off or I'm on. And that is really what the crux of our coaching is like, okay, how do we develop flexible restraint and flexible mindset? And that doesn't mean that you're off plan. It just means that you're able to navigate life better, because the people who are able to make successful changes to their physique, their health, and their performance are people who are able to navigate things with this flexible mindset and this flexible restraint. Because if you're only good on plan when you have your food in a Tupperware and you're at home and nobody's bothering you, good fucking luck.
Yeah.
You're gonna be able to do that for 3 weeks, and then something's gonna happen. Inevitably, life happens, and we need to be able to be prepared for that. So the whole point is to prepare people for their lives, for traveling, for family stuff, for stressors, all these different things. And it really is possible. It doesn't seem possible when you're in the midst of it and you're like, I don't know how I'd be able to get out of this. I promise you, you can. It takes time, but our clients do it, and it's incredible.
And what I'm really hearing you say throughout all of this is that you guys have such an approach that is focused on longevity and truly creating lifestyle change. And, you know, that's what I love about connecting with other coaches and people that have that mindset, because we need more people that are focusing on the individual and then them as a whole in their entire lives. And a lot of these people, they have families and children and spouses, and right. And so it's not just them that it's affecting, but it's everyone else around them. And, you know, I'm sure you've experienced with your clients, but it's like when you're able to positively impact, especially like a parent or something, they end up leading the way for their whole family. And now the whole family is getting their water in, the whole family is going on walks. And I think that's been a really rewarding part of what I do, is being able to see how it impacts like everyone that's around them as well. So the kind of what you were saying earlier, how like if we'll just give ourselves that time of the 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, it makes us better. Same in this sense where it's like, okay, if you focus on yourself, really get these foundational habits for yourself, you're going to make yourself better for your whole family and show up for them in such a better way. So I think it's really important that people take time to create their own habits, even, you know, as they listen to this, say, okay, what are my foundational habits?
And it doesn't have to be those ones.
Yeah.
You can pull from that. You can pick two from that. If you're like, I'm doing none of these, that seems really far away.
Yeah.
Pick one of them. Do that for a month.
Yeah.
And then that is a habit now. And then you can build and add another one on. So don't think that because you're not close to that you can't get there. That is a process, and that's something that does have to be developed over time. But yeah, the longevity is so important, because if we're only focused on short-term results, people only get worse in those situations. There's really no, and I'm not against making, you know, sometimes it's like, hey, I had to make a really big lifestyle change, right? And sometimes like that's what gets people going. So I'm not going to knock that. But at the same time, we also need to understand, okay, what is like the long-term picture of this? If you know, you're like, okay, I'm doing nothing and all of a sudden I'm going to train 7 days a week, 2 hours a day, I need 600 calories. That's going to last a few weeks, and then something's going to happen. You're going to get injured. You know, you had to go travel, you had kids, whatever. And that's what I think is such a problem with a lot of people in the industry, is that they come up with this optimal method. And then it's like, you're not taking into consideration what this person has to deal with. You, as a 25-year-old who's single, has a very different life than a 50-year-old with 4 kids and a hectic career and a lifetime of dieting history. Don't try to overlay your program and your experiences onto this other individual. That's not fair.
Yeah, mic drop. Okay, so you tried the cold plunge the other day, and you absolutely rocked it. We've been doing it every day since you've been here. Tell me about your experience with the cold plunge.
I loved it. I knew I would love it. I mean, honestly. So part of it is, again, nerdy stuff. I know the research about all of the like the dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine release is just incredible. Like,
I didn't even have to tell you. You're like, oh, I know this research already.
Of course. So it really is cool. So part of it, but I will be fair, there's a lot of cool research on things that I have learned about and read about, but then I don't want to do it like meditation, right? Or journaling or whatever. You're like, yeah, I know all the research, but I couldn't get myself to do it, right? So something like this is a little bit easier because it's like, well, I'm in it 3 minutes, can't really get out.
Yeah.
But it was great. It feels so invigorating is really the best word. And because I have been meditating more, I was off and on been doing it for like a few years now. It's finally been clicking more recently, just have been able to like really get into that. And the first time we did it, you're like, all right, like, really breathe, try to center yourself. And like when those dark thoughts come up, like really process that. And what's so interesting is that it was like, because it's so intense, it's all right there. Like you have nothing, you can't hide from that. You have to confront it. But being able to confront those thoughts and then be able to sit with them and move through them is so powerful. Instead of saying, okay, this is a scary or a bad thought, I need to run away from it. You're actually confronting it and tackling it, and that's how you move forward. So it was really cool to be able to do that, and also, push past that wall that you think, oh, I couldn't do this, and then you do it. So yeah, I love it. I'm like super hooked. I need to figure out how I can do this.
Yes, but I know. I love sharing it with people. And I think it's really incredible to watch. I always love watching people go through their first ones. And mind you, I've cold plunged before, but it was last year with some friends in Austin, Justin and Steph, who took me for my quote unquote first cold plunge, right?
I mean, I did an ice bath in like high school and stuff.
Same, but like the first like intentional cold plunge, right?
Definitely different.
Yes. And I mean, I remember, that experience for me when I got in right away, and I was breathing like they were telling me to. And at one point I kind of just like looked over at my friend Steph, who was in the other one. There was two right next to each other. And I like looked over her with like my eyebrows raised, like almost like a question mark, like, am I going to die? And she looked at me and she was like, you're okay. And even just someone to like be in it with you, that's like, you're okay. You're like, okay, I'm okay, and then to like breathe and work through it and overcome it. And I just remember how I felt afterwards, like just absolutely incredible. And, once I did that, I was like, okay, this is a modality that I want to have every single day. And now like, I'm probably annoying at this point with how much I talk about it, but it's just the best.
Yeah. I mean, it's like me and walking, like literally I talk about walking with everybody and they're probably like, bro, shut the fuck up about walking.
No, it's great. And I think we should shout these things.
Yeah. Because guess what? Now people message me all the time, like whether it's clients or people on social media, you've been talking about walking so much. I started to walk. You've been talking about journaling. So I finally picked up a journal. Yeah. You've been talking about, like, that's what this is about. You know what I mean? And I'm not just sharing this for the fuck of it. I'm like, no, this will literally make you better.
Yes.
So I want to share things that are going to do that. And obviously, the cold plunge, there, some people are not gonna be able to have access to that. Right.
But so, like cold shower,
even a cold shower, right? Cold showers are incredible. Is it the same thing? It's not as good, but it's better than nothing.
100%.
And I would definitely recommend that earlier if you do need to wake up. They're really, really great to, obviously, again, because of, the way that those, dopamine and norepinephrine are being released, you're going to feel very, very awake and alert. So anytime you really need to feel alert and awake, a cold shower is going to be good. And the opposite, if you're trying to go to sleep, taking a hot shower or a hot bath, because now your core temperature has to come up after that. So anyways, off topic. But it's even like the floating, right? Like I love,
which I still haven't done,
dude. So that's a whole trip. Like that is like a whole ass experience. The last time I was in there, I was losing my damn mind, but there was a lot going on for that flow. But like it is. So I had always been very, very like scared, right? Because again, like if anybody doesn't know, so a float tank it's like this giant pod, right? And you have this water and you have so much salt in it that like you're buoyant. So like they give you earplugs, but like your ears are underwater. Your whole body is submerged, like, like your tits are out, and then, your nose and your eyes are out. But everything else is underneath, right? And the temperature is like about body temperature. So it's very this like ambient temperature. And then the pod closes.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
And it is, so it's total sensory deprivation. So it is when I say pitch black, and there's no sound, there's nothing, right? Obviously besides the water. So you kind of just start to float and you kind of, you might hit the sides every once in a while and all that, but you're kind of just there. So the first time I did it, I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I bought this intro package. I've been thinking about this for so long. Like I just had this, like, I got to go do it. And so I bought like 3 sessions, you know what I mean? I was like, well, I'm bought in for 3 at least. So I get in and I've always been very, very terrified of the dark, like petrified. And again, when you're in something like this, you are forced to face whatever is in front of you, right?
Wow. And
the float sessions are an hour. So it's a little bit different than the 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the first time I went in there, there was a little light and it was, I had the light on. So I'll just keep this on. And I closed my eyes because, okay, it's dark when I close my eyes, but doing my meditations and stuff. I know that it's not dark. Like you can still see stuff. So I was like, you know what? Okay, I was about 10 minutes in, probably, give or take. I was like, okay, let me turn the light off. So I turned it off, and I went into almost full panic mode. Like it was the blackest. It was the darkest I'd ever felt in my whole life. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my God, like just pure panic. And I was like, no, this is why you're here. This is what you're supposed to be doing. All of this, right? And now I've probably done like 5 or 6 of them, and it is so interesting. And I typically, so if anybody wants to go do this, I tell people, like, go in with a thought or something that you kind of want to work through, right? Or just something that you maybe heard and you want to just kind of think more about, right? Work through a problem. And then typically things will kind of just go off from there, One time I actually did fall asleep. I was so, that was pretty wild.
Wow.
And I woke up because the like jets started going. That's how they let you know that it's your time. Like the jet will be going, and then when your session starts, it stops, and then it'll kick back on when the 60 minutes is over. One time the timer got messed up, so I was in there for almost 90 minutes. That was a whole trip. I was like, man, this has been like a whole ass like year, but like, okay. And
do you ever get bored?
Dude, there's so much up here.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, yeah, sometimes you're like, okay, like this could be over, but then no, that's not what you're here. You're not here to be.
You're here to be present.
Yeah, you're not here to be thinking about doing something else. You're here to be working through something.
Yeah.
And you don't give yourself, it's hard to give myself that much time to process something,
Totally.
right? Like, I try to go for these walks or journal for 10 minutes, but an hour, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? In this tube where I feel like I'm in outer space.
Have you ever cried in the float tank?
No, I haven't cried.
Okay. I'm just curious if people do that.
They might, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like I said, I had almost a panic attack, fallen asleep. I prayed last time, which was weird. The first time I prayed in like, I don't even know how many years. And I don't know. So there's,
cool.
like there's just weird stuff that happens. Like you just go to like the depths of, if you allow yourself to go through the depths of whatever that you're thinking about. And,
it's like you get beyond your thoughts and you get deep into your soul. It sounds like,
yeah, if you allow it.
Yeah.
And typically what I've done when I've gone in there is I will take a little bit of THC, like a very, very small amount. So for anybody who does use THC, I'll take about 5 milligrams, like nothing. And I'll balance it out with 30 milligrams of CBD from Cured. Because I find for me that balance makes it much smoother. Like I'm kind of hit or miss with THC, but it does a little bit like opens up those kind of creative pathways. So typically I'll do that. Sometimes I've gone in with nothing as well, but obviously some people take, mushrooms or other psychedelics, whatever. But I would definitely say for your first time, don't just go in there like willy-nilly, like never done a flip before. Let me take some LSD. Like probably not a good idea. Maybe just go in like totally sober and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then, unless you're somebody who's like super experienced, all that. But again, disclaimer, you do you. But yeah, you have to be very receptive and open to that. But it's kind of like anything, right? It's kind of like a meditation. You can I can sit in a meditation for 10 minutes and be like, bing, bong, ding, dong, ding, ding, the fucking monkeys like in my head. And I'm like thinking about 80 things. Yeah. And then other times you do like surrender and you're there for 30 seconds, but that's the point of meditation, right?
Yeah.
So this is just a little bit different. And it's about, okay, I'm letting this trail off productively, or I'm letting this trail off not productively. Okay, let me revisit this. I mean, even one of the times I wasn't even really thinking about it. And then I like put together the next like 6 main goals for my like next few years that I wanted to reach. And I was like,
you just
like my like vision board
clarity
of sorts.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I gotta write this shit down when I get out. Like this is pretty good.
What I find is that oftentimes we're in such a fast-paced society, we don't give ourselves time to just stop. And if we don't stop, like how do we expect to have clarity on, where we're going in life and what our goals are? And because if we're in that go, fast-paced mentality, we're actually just operating out of this very like masculine, get it done, execution type of energy. And there's actually like this other energy, the feminine, that's more of the creative, more of the openness and the explorative and the curious. And if we don't ever allow that to come out, then I feel like we might be missing out on where we should actually be going, or where we could be going, right? Maybe not say should, but like where we could be going in life. Because I think sometimes we never stop to analyze like, hey, is this working for me? Whether it's a job or a business, a relationship, you know, we just kind of go to the next thing and we keep doing what we've always done and we create these lives. And at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, am I actually fulfilled by the things that I've been chasing, by the things I've been pursuing, by the goals that I think are going to fulfill me? And I think if you never take time to take a step back, to gain that moment of clarity for yourself, then you might not never know that answer.
And some people don't want the answer, which is why they don't do it. That's why I didn't do it for so many years.
That's so real.
I couldn't sit with my thoughts because I didn't want to accept what was going to be presented. So if you continue to busy yourself, you don't have to worry with what's actually underneath there. But at some point it catches up, and it catches up to people in different ways and at different times. And sometimes people don't recognize it, but they fall prey to, you know, other addictions or other things or other coping mechanisms. And really that's just because they didn't want to maybe realize what they like should be doing or what they need to change in their life. And they just kind of run from it, which, you know, I always, I'm not a meditator. I'm not this. Of course I'm not. If I say that about myself, you know what I mean? If I don't want to sit with my thoughts, why don't I want to sit with my thoughts? Because they're pretty fucked up and maybe I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to push it away. But at some point, again, there's going to be enough things that go wrong to where you have to go, wow, I'm either going to continue to live this way and maybe even get worse, or I can stop this. And it's very painful. It's not easy. It's very painful to be doing that kind of inner work while also like maintaining a life, you know what I mean? And not going like totally AWOL. But what is the alternative to continue? And anytime I'm frustrated with like, well, why am I still here? Why am I thinking this? And like that, like, what is the alternative to go back to what I was doing, which I don't want to be doing because I felt how bad that was for all those years.
So what you're talking about is exactly how I describe the process of you literally have a choice in life to evolve or die. And it's not your physical death, but it's the death of the highest version of you. It's the death of the soul inside that wants to come out and be the fullest expression of ourselves, you know, and we live our lives one way and we get into these circumstances, you know, that at one point really worked for us. And then sometimes it starts to not work for us. And sometimes we want to resist the truth of that. We want to resist that and say, no, but I love this. Like I love this business, you know, or I love this relationship or whatever it might be for you. And in reality, you realize it's actually making you miserable. It's holding you back. It's toxic. It's not healthy. And I think it's a really, really hard reality because with that truth comes a decision, and you have to decide to create a better life for yourself. You have to decide to work on these things or literally remain the same, which is just one of the hardest positions to be in. And that's what actually launched my entire brand Evolve, and which started actually as a YouTube series where I just documented my journey of evolving. And it really came down to that point where I was like, I have two options right now. I can literally evolve or accept this as my reality for the rest of my life, knowing I'm forever going to be unhappy and unfulfilled and that this is not the life that I was created for. And choosing that option to evolve, like you mentioned, is hard and it's not pretty and it gets really messy sometimes, but man, it is so worth it. It's so worth it. Like all the amount of pain that you have to go through of doing the hard work and choosing the uncomfortable things in life, it really is so worth it because you start to grow into this version of yourself that you can be really, really proud of, you know, one that is pursuing that highest version of yourself. And I think when you're living that, that's when you're fully living life, right? Because there's a lot of people walking around that I feel are not fully alive. And feeling fully alive includes the good moments and the moments that hurt, right? Like every time a moment hurts, you're like, ow, 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 I don't want to feel this. And people want to mask it, you know, and they want to pretend it's not there. And it's like, girl, you got to feel it. Like you got to allow yourself to fully feel it and be like, this hurts, and understand that like that is a part of the life cycle, you know, knowing full well that the hurt's not going to last. But if you pretend it's not there, it's going to last a lot longer than it really needs to.
100%. And that's pretty much how I lived most of my life. And it took a while to recognize that, but I think a lot of people do that, whether they realize it or not. And it's just easier to suppress things and to just not deal with them. But like I said, at some point it's going to catch up, and then you're going to look up and be like, wow, is this what I wanted? Is this really who I want to be in the position that I want? And I think people too have to reevaluate, you know, we were talking a little bit like redefine healthy and like what your goals are, but like also like reevaluate like where you are, like what you want to be doing. And those things are important too. Like, you know, I think about goals that I had years ago and I'm like, oh, I actually don't want that, right? Like more life experiences have shown me, whether through my own experiences, like with me, like myself personally, or with other people, like, oh, I actually don't want that. Like, that's great for them. Like, that looks really rad. Like, I support that. I don't want this life at all.
Yeah.
And I think that recognizing that is important, because if you don't recognize actually what you want, if you don't have a real true aim, you're always going to feel like everything isn't good enough, because you're never able to be satisfied, because you don't know what you're actually working towards.
That's so good.
So what is the point? You know, I'm like, I set all these goals for myself and I'm never actually happy. It's like, what's the point of that?
Yeah. And what you're mentioning too, how you said, you know, sometimes you'll witness maybe someone else's experience and respect it and support it, but it's not for you. I think people are scared to change their mind. You know, they're like, oh, I have done this for X amount of years, or I've always said that I was going to do this. And it's like, you can literally change your mind at any point in time. At any point in time, you can decide to be the co-creator of your life and create an entire new life. I think that's the beauty of the gift of life, right? Like, if we are gifted tomorrow, we can wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? I'm going to close my coaching business. I'm going to move to an island, become a bartender. Not that I've thought about this or anything.
It's like, this sounds very specific. And if I don't
this
hear
island
from you,
and this bar, and I'm going to bartend and teach fitness lessons and suntan and write books.
I mean, there sounds like there's a worse thing that we could be doing. So
if I disappear, just check the near islands, the furthest islands. I mean, I'm kidding. Well, okay, this has been incredible. So I want to kind of wrap things up here by asking you, what is something that you do on a daily basis to evolve in your life? We kind of talked about a lot, I know, but
yeah, I was like,
you could recap too.
Yeah, I would say that honestly, just being able to sit with myself and actually recognize like emotions and process emotions. And I'm very much still in this process and still very new with all of this, right? Newish with all of this, but that has been the biggest growth that I've had, is when I've been able to do those things. And it's different modalities, right? It is the walking, it's the journaling, it's the meditating, it's the floats, it's the pushing yourself to do things that you don't want to do, like all of that, but just in a very different way. You know, I was so used to doing things like, I can push myself in training, I can, you know, write this thing, I can do, like, all very, very externally focused goals. But I think turning to more of these like intrinsic values that I want to work on, and like actually doing this like inner work, which is very untangible and not very like satisfying to be like, check this box. Like, I can check the box, journal today, but like, did I get a lot out of it? I don't know. I might have, I might not have, but that's also that process. So I think that really it's just being able to sit with myself and find different ways for me that works. And that's going to be able to challenge where I'm at and push me to grow.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your modalities and all of the habits that you have. And I hope that the people that are listening that really seek to evolve in their lives will not look at a bunch of the things that we do and get overwhelmed by it. But like you said, even if you just pick one and start to implement one of those things into your life, I think once you start to see the benefits of that, you can try something else. Also knowing that not everything works for everyone, right? So maybe meditation is just, you know, it's just really a struggle for you right now and it's not getting you that result that you want. But maybe you're like, hey, let me try a cold shower next morning. And the next morning you're like, wow, I instantly feel less anxiety, more clarity. I feel better energy. And maybe that's a simple modality that you choose to implement inside of your life. So, you know, really make it simple for you guys. Just choose which modalities you want to start doing and watch how you can start to truly evolve in your life. Laurin, is there anything exciting? Is there anything coming up for you that you want to share? Any sort of launches or coaching opportunities? You know, go ahead, and floor is yours for that.
Yeah. So we are always taking on clients. So if you guys are interested in one-on-one coaching, visit teamlocofit.com. We do have a podcast. So it's the LoCoFit Show. And then we will be launching a app soon. So in a few months, we will be having, it'll be a really great platform, and it's going to combine, you know, some more basics of like nutrition and training as well as mental health. And we're going to provide exclusive content on there and just really give people a place, because one-on-one coaching is a lot, you know, it's a big commitment, both, you know, financially, but also with what you need to be doing on a daily basis. So we wanted to have something to where, you know, people could kind of scale into our methods, like still have our methods, but do it in a different way. And then also for people who maybe have utilized coaching, but kind of want something but don't necessarily need coaching. So it's kind of like the intro and the outro option.
Yeah.
We've never had that before. So that'll be out in a few months. So stay tuned. And yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, guys, you know the drill. If you enjoyed today's show, please do us both a favor and tag us both on your Instagram stories. Let us know what your favorite part of the show was. If you are listening on iTunes, then please do me a favor and rate and review the show. That is the number one way that more listeners and other listeners that don't currently listen will be able to find the show. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Evolve with Emily. Bye, guys.